come together today to celebrate the life and mourn the passing of Laura Siegal, Leva Bat Yosef. We'll begin by reading Psalm 23. Mizmor LaDavid, Anoi Roi Lo Echzar, Bino Desha Yarbitzeni, Amei Menuchot Yanchileni, Nafshi Yoshaved Yancheni, V'magma Terek L'man Shemo, Gam Ki Elech Begetz Malvet Lo Ira Ra, Ki Ata Imadi, Shiftecha Min Shaftecha, Hemel Yinachmoni, Taruch Lefanai Shalchan Neged Torah, Deshanta B'Shem Roshi, Kosi Revaya, Aktov Chesed Yerdefuni Kol Yemei Chaya, V'Shafti B'Beita Anoi L'Orech Yamim. A song of David. The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not lack. God causes me to lie down in lush pastures. God leads me beside tranquil waters. God restores my soul and guides me in righteous paths for God's name's sake. Though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil, for you are with me. Your scepter and staff, they comfort me. You prepare a table before me in full view of my adversaries. You have anointed my head with oil. My cup overflows. May only goodness and kindness pursue me all the days of my life, and I shall dwell in the house of the Lord for the length of days. I know Laura's grandchildren now want to share some memories of her. Yes.
I'm going to talk a little bit about myself today because Grandma Laura was such a big part of who I am, who I've become. And I think that's because, as we all know, she was such a selfless person. And I think there's so many ways we can name her selflessness, but what strikes me is the way that she fought for so many years against cancer, just so she could be with us for more years, so she could bring us together as a family and watch us all grow. At times, Grandma could be intensely critical. I think we've all felt the sting of her reprimands, but we've all learned so much from her too. And we've been made better people and made better decisions from it. We haven't always been able to be the people that she seemed to say that we should be. But I don't think she actually wanted us to be that person. She wanted us to be self-critical, to not settle for something that we didn't truly want. One of the reasons I felt so fortunate to be able to go to college on the East Coast and for the past couple of years to work as a freelancer was how much time I got to spend with Grandma and Grandpa here in Cleveland, and over the past couple of years just with Grandma. And even when we weren't spending time together, Grandma and I would talk frequently on the phone every couple of weeks or so. I think it says so much about her and our relationship that as a 20-something young man, I genuinely enjoyed spending time with her. She truly was one of my best friends. As she moved towards the end of her life, and I moved into the prime of my own, I felt her energy and her spirit and her ambition pouring into me. In our extremely one-sided conversations, she asked me about my life. I had to come face to face with my choices and my path. She asked me, usually implicitly, in a very gentle way, how are you willing to live? She was like my therapist sometimes. It's hard to think of specific memories since there are so many good ones, but one that stands out above all else, not because of what happened, but because of how it has echoed through the rest of my life, is when I was 7 years old and we were all in Florida, and Grandma gave me a little brown journal with a strap on it. And she sat me down in a corner and she commanded me to write in it. And I did. I complained about having to write in the journal and about how Grandma was making me write. But by the end of that page, I was thanking her for making me write. I haven't stopped writing since, and my best writing always seems to come by hand in these little notebooks like the one that she gave me. Grandma gave me that gift, the invitation, the commandment to pursue my passions and my dreams. And she'll always be with me among these pages and in all of our hearts.
had 3 grandmothers. Two of them were not worth very much. If Laura hadn't been my grandmother, I shudder to think of what a wasteland my heart would be. We didn't always agree or connect, but what she had undoubtedly was the interest in who I was. Both of my grandparents taught me so much about what it means to love and be loved. And I will always remember them. And I will always teach about them to my kids.
I'm wearing my grandmother's shoes. They're a little too big, so I have to be careful, but they're closed-toed, and I knew she'd like them. My grandmother had style. Everyone knew her as a beautiful woman. My friends would look at our picture and they'd say, "Who's that? She can't be your grandmother." But beyond the beauty, my grandmother was so much more. You may remember that she was a pioneer in Cleveland, TV and radio. Cultured, could talk about anything from around the world, art. But she was so much more, and as my brother said, what my grandparents taught us, it's very difficult to separate them because of what they gave us in love and opportunity and the importance of family. And as Benjamin said, in those last few years, how she started to pour her heart and soul into us. And she became my #1 cheerleader, always asking, "What are you doing now? You can do this. You're amazing." And just the kindness of those words will fill me up for my lifetime. My grandmother will be missed, but her impact will go on for generations. And as Lindsay said, we as a family will continue to share that love and those lessons that she passed on to us. But they look good, right?
I want to echo the sentiments that came before mine and talk a little bit about the ways that Grandma was such a role model for me. Every time I get dressed for an event, I always have her voice in my head, guiding me with her advice. And then because I still have a rebellious teenage punk side, I do something like throw a pink sash around everything. But I think she really liked that about me, even though she sometimes used to laugh about it. When I was a child, Justine and I were playing out in the snow, and Justine lost a boot, and I carried her back to the patio where Grandma met her and snuggled her tightly and gave her hot chocolate and a lot of love. And so the next time we were out playing in the snow, or maybe it was only a few minutes later, I contrived to lose my boot and hop back to the house and receive the same nurturing love. She packed my lunches for summer camp and always put my favorite treats inside. I loved her tuna salad, and I still make it the same way. She had a very personal relationship with people in her family. It was different than Grandpa. She was definitely more personal and close with everyone. There were so many ways that I wanted to emulate her. I wanted to read the way she did, like a narrator. And I still try to do that when I speak publicly and when I read to my child. And now Henry does the same thing. He reads like a narrator. I tried to copy her writing style. And the one thing that I will never forget is how beautiful that writing style was and how thoughtful her notes were. And it communicated to me how important that was, because it was so nice to get her notes. She was always very calm and collected. She cut through the noisy BS to express herself in simple and clear terms, and I aspire to do that. I don't always succeed, believe me, but I do aspire to it. And I'm grateful that I had such a close relationship with her, as she modeled that too. I don't think we left anything important unsaid. She encouraged my work. She encouraged everything. She was my best customer. And she leaves behind a strong legacy that I think will be here for a long time. And if there's any truth to the notion that a person remains alive as long as people remember them, then she's got another 100 years to go. Thanks. My son wrote a few words too. He said, "Dear families, I don't want to get too sad. That's why I'm not here. I am bummed Grandma is gone. I am glad she lived a happy life with the Gullivans, Schneiders, and Siegals. She impacted my life a lot. Thanks for letting me talk."
Michael, I know you want to share some words now.
We were talking, and twice she said, there was an older woman and she was in the Himalayas. And the guru said, "Is there anything you wish for?" And she said, "Yes." He said, "Say it. Can you say it in 3 words?" And she said, "Yes. Sheldon, please come home." So she liked that. She liked jokes. There were a lot of things that, she really did like. And she was, very different from other women that I knew. And she told me again how when she was in Paris, she was at a fashion show, and there was Catherine Deneuve and her sister. My father and I saw the movie, but Laura really saw her, in person, and that was very impressive. And Laura did a lot of things that a lot of people didn't do, and I admire her very much for being a warm and kind person. Thank you.
It has been my joy and privilege to know Laura for 37 years. She is the best mother-in-law in the world. I'm not biased, I know that for a fact. She is an exemplar of fierce motherly love and grace and intelligent conversation. I will miss my second mother forever. I am not a writer, and I don't come up with intelligent, original ideas, but I appreciate other writers. I'm surrounded by them, including our dear friend David, who is Benjamin's best friend since first grade. And I have his permission to share this email where he talked about both Alvin and Laura. So I'd like to read this to you. Dear Kirk and Yorandi, I just got off the phone with Ben, and I'm so saddened to hear of Laura's passing. She holds a place in my heart, both by dint of my awareness from a very young age of how both of you and Ben loved her, and also because of her incredibly warm and generous conversations with me. I am spending the evening thinking of her smile and grace during her 80th birthday party, where David sang at that party, of her hospitality during my youthful visit to the wonderful house in Cleveland, of her pride for Benjamin after he read the Torah at his bar mitzvah, at her wit and repartee with Alvin during a dinner in New York, during my first ever trip to New York City. In that last wisp of a memory, I remember thinking that both Laura and Alvin seemed to have arrived at such a place of clarity about what they enjoyed and how they felt about the world, and that they seemed particularly activated by the bustle of New York. That trip was my introduction to what is now my home, and Laura, oddly, was the figure who I most associated with the spirit of confidence and self-knowledge that this place, at its best, represents. I'm sure many more memories will surface. I'm sending so much love to each of you, who I really consider part of my family. I'm so happy we saw each other when I was back in San Francisco, and I can't wait for our next opportunity to reminisce over Laura's legacy and break bread together, whether it's here, there, or somewhere else entirely. I love you, Laura.
First, I want to thank everyone for your loving support, which means the world to me. It's really helped me get through all of this. And I want to thank Mom's caretakers too. Jovita and Angelo were angels right through to the final phase. Incredible. Incredible. Well, I always knew my mom was an unusual person. But it's really not until recent years that I realized how remarkable she was. That is. I've gained so much admiration for her. Really, as Justine mentioned, pioneer, a leader of women, becoming a spokesperson for radio and television at a time when that was almost completely absent among women generally. And the amazing life that she led during that time. Interviewing people like Walter Cronkite and Mike Wallace, having her own talk show, Opinion Line for WERE. I remember her driving me out there one time for my 15th birthday. I was terrified. We got stopped by a cop because she did have a tendency to speed occasionally. But she let me in on that life, which was, I realized how incredible that was for a young child at that time. There's, as I think all of you know, her accomplishments accomplishments in the professional area are outstanding and have fed so many of us in our own life path. But as a mother, she was also, I hardly have words for it, I mean, extraordinary. I think the word that sums it up for me is that she was extraordinarily attuned to me and her family, those she loved. But she was so tuned in, supporting me to be creative, to expand myself physically and emotionally, mentally. And she supported me to go into psychoanalysis as a young child after the tremendous loss of my brother, her son. And that's incredible too, how she came back. Talk about her dealing with cancer. She dealt all her life with Kelly. And yet was able to be a fount of ever-flowing love, care, attunement to me and the family. So I'd like to conclude this with her favorite poem. She insisted on me reciting this at her funeral. My mom didn't have any labels, but I would say at heart she was an existentialist, somebody who believed in life and who believed in living to the hilt, and living and doing. I think you'll see that this poem by C.P. Cavafy is a beautiful summary of her. That's why she asked me to read it. It's called Ithaca, and it's based on the travels of Odysseus from the great Homer classic. Always keep Ithaca fixed in your mind. To arrive there is your ultimate goal. But do not hurry the voyage at all. It is better to let it last for long years, and even to anchor at the isle when you are old, rich with all that you have gained along the way. Rich with all that you have gained along the way. Faithfully delivered, Mom, by your son. My eternal love.
As we mourn Laura's passing and celebrate her life, we are now in the Hebrew month of Elul, the month that precedes the high holidays. It is a time when we prepare ourselves to enter in the days of awe, to look at the world with that sense of wonder. And it's fitting in many ways that Laura passed away during this time. Elul is also a month when we take into account what we have done over the past year, determine our course for the future, as we seek to attune ourselves to the world and to those around us. It is also a time when communities and families begin to gather in preparation for the holidays. These principles, family, attunement, determination, and awe, were the values that guided Laura's life. Laura was born in 1930 in Cleveland Heights, the oldest of two sisters. Arlene, you told me that she was your big older sister. You were close in childhood and throughout your life, frequently spending Shabbat and holiday dinners together. Laura loved her family, but that didn't dampen her enthusiasm for exploring the world. Arlene, you even told me that she felt that she could live in anywhere, and at one point even considered moving to a Native American reservation before your mother quickly put an end to that idea. In 1956, Laura's family expanded when Kirk was born. Kirk, you told me about how attuned you felt your mom was to your psyche. She encouraged you to explore the world, shared with you her love of museums, and looked the other way even when you left the house to watch late-night movies. She was always open to discussing whatever was on your mind, and by introducing you to psychoanalysis, laid the foundations of your future career as a psychologist. I know she took tremendous pride in your accomplishments. Whenever I visited, she spoke to me about what you were doing. Laura also was determined and laid out goals for herself in every aspect of her life. She was one of the first women in Cleveland to appear on TV when she reported the weather for an evening news program. She also hosted a radio show on current events and was a spokesperson for the Cleveland Illuminating Company. However, Laura's persistence extended beyond her professional life. In 1969, she met the love of her life, Alvin, at an event at the Warrensville Center Synagogue, and immediately fell in love. She gently chastised her mother for not having introduced them sooner. They married in 1975 and built a loving family together. Benjamin, you recalled to me how devoted Laura was to all of her grandchildren and great-grandchildren. She loved to share her favorite places with them, especially the Cleveland Museum of Art, and was always up to explore or go on an adventure. She wanted to know what you were interested in and loved family trips, where she was able to show her children, grandchildren, and great-grandchildren her favorite places in the world. Throughout her life, Laura also loved to learn and grow, as she studied history and just about the world around her. She continued taking classes at Siegal College, one of her most beloved institutions, and a place she always spoke with me about, until just a few months ago. Whenever I visited her, she enjoyed discussing Judaism's view on some of life's deepest questions, but I always also had to eat something during these conversations. She was a consummate host. May her devotion to family, her sense of attunement with those around her, and her determination be an inspiration for us all, and may her memory be for a blessing. We'll continue now with the memorial prayer. Please rise. El Malay Rachamim, Shochen Bamromim, Hemse Menucha Nechona, Al Kanfei Hashchina, Bemalot, Kedoshim Utorim, Kezoha Harakia, Maskirim, Et Nishmat, Liba Bat Yosef, Shachachal Olama, Ba'avur She'anachnu Mipalim, Ba'ad Haskarat Nishmata, Began Eden, Techei Menuchata, Achen Bal Harachamim Yastera, Beseter Kanafav Olamim, Bitzor Chaim Et Nishmata, Anoichu Nachalata, Tenoach B'Shalom, Al Mishkavav, V'nomar Amen. God, full of compassion, who dwells on high, grant proper repose on the sheltering wings of your presence, in the lofty levels of the holy and pure, who shine as the brightness of the firmament onto the soul of Liba Bat Yosef, Laura Siegal, who has gone to her world, and for whose memory we pray. May her repose be in paradise. May the Master of Compassion bring her under the cover of God's wings and bind her soul in the bond of life. May the Lord be her heritage, and may she repose on her resting place in peace. And let us say, Amen. We will now begin the process of interment. The casket will be lowered. begin the process of interment of saying our last goodbyes to Laura. Taking part in burying someone in Judaism is considered one of the greatest mitzvot you can do. It's considered to be a chesed shel emet, a true act of kindness, because it's a deed that the person you're taking care of can never repay to you. So everyone here will have an opportunity to add some dirt and to help take part in the burial process. We'll begin with Kirk, Laura's son. Just for this first shovelful, you'll use the back of the shovel because this is something hard for us to do. It's an expression of how difficult it is to say goodbye. And also for that reason, we don't pass the shovel off from one person to the next. When you're done, you can just place it back into the pile. And there are also gloves here for anyone who would like to take them.
Michael, if you'll go over that way, you'll be saying Kaddish. Right where you would.
We'll now recite Suddah Kadin, a series of verses that speaks to God's righteousness. Even at this time of loss and pain, we still express our hope and belief in God's ultimate righteousness and that justice, truth, and peace will prevail. Hatzor tamim palo, ki kol derachav mishpat, el emunav einav el tzadik v'yasharhu. The rock, perfect is God's work, for all God's paths are just. God of faith without iniquity, righteous and fair is God. The rock, perfect in every work. Who can tell God what to do? God rules below and above, causes death and restores life, lowers down to the grave and also raises up. The rock, perfect in every action. Who can tell God how to act? God, whose word generates deed, do undeserved kindness with us. In the merit of Yitzhak, who is bound like a lamb, hearken and act. Righteous one in all ways, the rock who is perfect, slow to anger and full of compassion. Please have mercy and spare parents and children. For yours, master of forgiveness and compassion. Righteousness are you, Lord, to cause death and to restore life. For in your hand is the safekeeping of all spirits. Far be it from you to erase our memory. May your eyes compassionately take cognizance of us. For yours, master, are compassion and forgiveness. For a person, whether a year old or whether living 1,000 years, of what profit is it? As if having never been shall be that person. Blessed is the true judge who engenders death and revives. Blessed is God, for God's judgment is true. God scans everything with his eye and recompenses the person according to the account and the just sentence, and all must give God's name acknowledgement. We know, Lord, that your judgment is righteous. You are righteous when you speak and pure when you judge. There is no complaining about the manner of your judgment. Righteous are you, Lord, and your judgments are fair. True judge, judge of righteousness and truth. Blessed is the true judge, for all of God's judgments are righteous and true. The soul of all living is in your hand. Righteousness fills your right hand in your power. Have mercy on the remnant of the sheep of your hand, and say to the angel of death, hold back your hand. Great in counsel and abundant deed, your eyes are open upon all the ways of the children of humankind, to give each one according to their ways and according to the fruit of their deeds. To declare that the Lord is just, my rock in whom there is no wrong. The Lord has given, and the Lord has taken away. Blessed is the name of the Lord. And God, the merciful one, will forgive iniquity and not destroy, frequently withdrawing anger and not arousing the entirety of his rage. We'll now recite the mourner's Kaddish. If everyone could please rise. I'll say it along with the mourners. Yitkedal v'yitkedash shmei Rabbah. Amad v'ruch v'chertei v'lechotei v'chaychon v'yemachon v'chay l'kol v'Yisrael v'galav v'zman kariv v'ru amen. Yehei shmei Rabbah v'varach le'lam u'lamei lamaya. Yitbarak v'shtabach v'pe'er v'dermam v'naseh v'tadar v'talel v'talal shmei d'fusha rechu. V'elam minko birchata v'shirata tushbechata v'nechamata daranam b'alma v'imru amen. Yehei Shlomo Rabba min Shemaya, v'chaim aleinu v'al kol Yisrael v'imru amen. Osei shalom b'mromav, u'yasei shalom aleinu v'al kol Yisrael v'imru amen. At this moment, we're saying our last goodbye to Laura, but we will carry her with us always in the way in which we live our lives. If people could line up in two lines and parallel lines facing each other, Kirk, Arlene, and Michael will walk through them, and we'll walk between you, and we'll have a chance to offer them the traditional words of comfort.